So, what is the best advice you've ever given, not received? We're always asked about the best advice we've received, but what is the best one you've ever given? That's what I want to talk about in this edition. So, welcome to the podcast. I'm Peggy van der Plas. Thank you so much for being here. So, I was recently on a panel for a conference organized by the Club Canadien de Toronto, and it was part of a summit, the Francophone Summit on Finance and Investment. And so that was an event that was exploring how capital, leadership, values intersect really to shape the world of finance. So my panel was on power, leadership, and investment, who shapes the finance of tomorrow. And funny enough, for a Francophone conference, my panel was entirely in English. Yes, of course. And so, if you've been reading me for a while, you already know where I stand, at least in Canada. I believe the pension funds should serve really as a growth engine for the country's economy. When you have a large organization like that, the high value job should be in your home country. So when we're talking about Canada, should be Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, not anywhere else in the world, especially that there is not necessarily an operation nil to that. Again, if you want to be more resilient and innovative and fair, there are many things we need to do, blah, blah, blah. You've heard me talk about that. That's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is that question we got as panelists from the audience, and which was about, actually, it was coming from a very young woman, freshly graduated, bright-eyed, ready to conquer the world of finance. And she asked us, what is our best advice for someone like her starting out in the finance industry? Seems like a simple question, but it's a big one. And, my co-panelists gave good answers. Build a personal board of advisors, invest in yourself, network strategically, all useful, all true, and if I'm honest, the usual suspects, and before that on the panel, there had been several discussions about gender imbalance, the glass ceiling, that female leaders meet in finance, and the numbers obviously that are quite depressing of VC funding going to women from 2% in Canada to 3% in Europe to 4% in the US. But I really decided I wanted to go off script, And my answer to that question about the best advice was really about your mental health and your self-beliefs, because we often think that the enemy, the blocks, they're external, the guy in the boardroom, the all boys club, the system. But in my experience, the biggest enemy sits much closer to home. And personally, I never needed a glass ceiling to sabotage my own career. I did it all on my own. Sure, I can blame anti-French bias, a tall woman discomfort, second language perception. But the truth is the real issue was a lack of belief in myself. And very often others saw my potential way more clearly than I did. And of course, I'm a woman who was born in the 70s in France, so I wasn't really raised, to cultivate self-confidence. So yes, there was a kind of barrier, but it was more a distorted mirror than a glass ceiling. So, and don't get me wrong, I've witnessed women who were sidelined unfairly, that's the truth, absolutely. But I would argue that self-sabotage quietly takes out more careers than discrimination ever will. Let me repeat that. self-sabotage takes out more careers than discrimination. And if, I love talking about imposter syndrome. And a few weeks ago, I was on another panel and I asked a co-speaker about imposter syndrome. And she looked very puzzled and she was like, I don't get it. If you already have a job, how can you feel like an imposter? You already have a job. So she was really puzzled. And bless her heart and her confidence, I explained the concept of self-sabotage. That yes, you get the job, but deep down, you don't believe you deserve it. So consciously or not, you blow it up. Oh, you say no to a great opportunity. Oh, you don't even apply and you find perfectly rational, good excuses for, why it's not making sense for you to say yes or to apply. Well, the real reason is that you're not feeling good enough. So I've done all of the above more than once, guilty of that. But the good news is that you can course correct. So for me, that really means now being aware of a pattern and resisting my old reflex of, leaving before they find out that I'm not as good as they think I am. And now when, that voice whispers, say no, you'll fail, they'll see you're not that smart, I ignore it. It still whispers, it's still there, it's softer, it's less often, but it's still there. And I'm sure it's going to be there until I die. And so I think that is an advice that really matters. And the next time you have a young person, man or woman, doesn't really matter, that is asking for your best career advice, please pause before saying, network more, get a mentor, invest in yourself. They can get that list from ChatGPT. They don't need you. Instead, tell them that, okay, your mind will make or break your career long before your boss does. Learn to silence the inner critic before you try to impress the other one. Because at the end of the day, power, leadership, investment, everything starts in the same place, inside your own head. So I hope you enjoyed this edition. Again, my name is Peggy van der Plas. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. What is the best advice you've ever given? And what you're thinking about my best advice, and maybe your own examples of self-sabotage. That's always interesting. Misery likes company. So thank you so much for listening, and talk to you next week. Bye-bye.